So what's the one piece of career advice you wish someone had given you when you were starting out?
This is a bit of an odd story around this, and maybe the timings comes into play, but have you seen the recent social media videos of people in the bed making competition? Have you, out of interest, seen?
I'm not actually.
There's some videos floating around at the minute of social media, and anybody watching this back, February 2024, people making, it's a bed making competition, right? And in 30 odd seconds, they make this pristine covered bed. And I will get to the point, honestly. And if I was to ask people though, can you make a bed, right? I'll be 40 in a couple of months. My answer is yeah, I can make a bed. But if I was to then compare myself with those individuals that make a bed in a much better condition and in about, honestly, it's a couple of minutes, if that, then you look at it and you go, no, I can't make a bed. And I think what that bit is, it's understanding context of where you're at. I think the one piece of advice I would say to my younger self, or give to somebody else, is compare to yourself to yesterday, not to what is perceived to be the end destination, the greatness, and that manifested itself for me when I was starting out in my career as, I think for about 2 years I had this kind of feeling, maybe nowadays it's got a term of imposter syndrome or something, but for about 2 years I had this feeling where I would face a problem or a challenge in writing a piece of code or a problem to solve in the application I might have been writing at the time. But at the end of the day, getting to a stage where thinking, I don't think I can solve this. I don't know if I can solve this. And you kind of then spiral into a moment of, the only thing for it is for me to quit. If it's tomorrow, I'm going to get found out. People are paying me to do this and I can't do it. So the only solution to that is to quit. Thankfully, I had a really good mentor. Somebody that would ask the right questions to help me arrive at the solution myself rather than just telling me what to do. But that piece of advice would be to compare yourself as you make those progression to kind of what you were yesterday. And a good engineer will always hate what they did yesterday. Today you've got a little bit of knowledge that tells you a little bit more about, maybe it's how it's written, another way of doing something that would have saved 20 lines of code. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more today about what the customer wants. So you go, oh, right, so they quite want that. So the thing I was thinking they wanted wasn't quite right. So today I've got a bit more info to make it. So good engineers will always have that progression. So yeah, that I guess to distill it down is that piece of comparing yourself to yesterday and spotting your own progression rather than comparing yourself to the people that can make beds in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I love that analogy. Well, first of all, that's the first video I'm going to be watching once we finish this call. I'll have to give it a minute before I go back and sit at my desk so my boss doesn't see me watching it. But it is so true that it's like, what you could do yesterday, you could do today, and then you'll be able to do tomorrow even better. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You learn bit by bit on the role, and like I said, it was like 2 years for me, and then you get to the bit where you face your next problem. You're like, I've seen something like this.
Yeah.
You don't just consciously say that stuff, but you kind of go, yeah, okay, I've got a starting point on this. Whereas for the first bit, you don't. You're like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
And you break it down, and then you experience it, and you say, I've seen something like this before. This worked, so I'll try that bit.
Can you share a pivotal moment in your career journey that has made a significant impact?
Yeah, this is a bit of a tough one. I've mentioned this on previous sessions like this, where actually the pivotal moment for me was the first time in terms of technical leadership was having to remove somebody from a team. And kind of saying it how it is, having to fire somebody for the first time. And that's a really kind of rough thing to say because it's something that we might not necessarily talk about in terms of technical leadership. The reason it was pivotal for me is because I didn't do that person justice. So I often feel when somebody leaves the team, really it's a reflection on the manager, whoever's the as Radical Candor would say, the boss in that moment. And what I mean by not doing that person justice was that I wasn't clear enough with the individual about their progression areas, and really that if those areas, for sake of a better description, didn't improve, then it would be a different conversation about the future for that individual. And if I'd have been clear with somebody, and you can still do this in a caring and compassionate manner, and do it from a place of helping somebody develop. But if I'd have been clearer, it might have been a different outcome. It might have been actually, if I'd have given that person the clarity of what they needed to do to improve, and how, or resources or things like that to do that, it might have been a different outcome. And I think I did that person a disservice about not giving them the right level of feedback, the right level of clarity, and it resulted in that. And obviously, when you have to take those decisions, it never gets easier. Like anybody that says, "Oh no, I don't mind," I think that's untrue. You're just masking. You're trying to be defensive. It's just not easy to remove things. But I think if you know you've done something right by somebody, you give opportunities and you've given the right feedback, you can be a touch more comfortable with having taken a decision. And that was a moment for me where I was like, yeah, you need to build a relationship, but you shouldn't be putting your own desire, my own desire to be liked, ahead of being clear, and whilst being empathetic with somebody, but clear and allowing them the opportunity to develop. And that was it. Yeah, that was probably a moment. It kind of always sits with me, and it was probably 12 or 13 years ago.
But at the same time, I think it shows that you've got a high level of emotional intelligence in decisions, isn't it? It's like, you were a lot younger in your career as well, and I suppose it takes things like that for a bit of experience to learn from it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's the disappointing thing, isn't it, to some extent, isn't it? You need that experience to go, I didn't need it. And that person, it was at the cost of that individual, really. So yeah, that's the disappointing thing with it. But you're absolutely right. You can only take that and go, the right response is, how can I develop from?
Yeah, you touched on that as well. I think it's a lot more worrying if you don't feel anything when you're making decisions like that. That's when, that's when it's probably a bit more scary that some people are capable of just like not caring at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's plenty of them about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're on the receiving end of that and you feel this kind of sense of coldness, that a lot of it's self-preservation, that can be, in my opinion. Then not a great situation.
How do you approach challenges and setbacks in your professional life, and what would you say your go-to strategy is for overcoming them? Yeah,
so challenges, professional life. I think you can almost touch in on personal life as well, can't you, to some extent, with your tactics or approaches that we might leverage. So I think the first one is kind of I didn't want to start on saying this is what I do, like you're super resilient or things like that, and drop those things in. So the first one is I do have to have a bit of a ramble to somebody, and I do have to get it out and verbalise it. A good tactic with me when I'm doing that is if somebody then kind of takes the mick out of me, for want of better phrase, that kind of gets me to go, okay, yeah, let me put this in context and things. But having a little bit of a ramble at someone is a way of me exercising it. And if I've not got that someone, just talking it out loud, as odd as that might sound, like the techies, we might call it rubber duck debugging when we're trying to solve a problem. But talking it out loud kind of makes you have to label things. So you have to label what you're actually feeling and talk it out loud. So that's the first thing. I have to go through this kind of phase of processing, if we like, processing it. And then I guess, so that's like a tactic. Another one is I call it comparing down. So when you do face a setback, generally, especially in the workplace, we're a little bit spoiled. Like our lives in engineering can be tough at times, but comparatively speaking to what might happen in the world and what is happening in the world, we're we're pretty comfortable, right? Like, and I think taking that kind of step back, and when I say comparing down, it's like saying to realizing that it could be worse. There are people in much more difficult situations. Again, is another approach I take to kind of just check myself a little bit, and kind of put it in context. That's not to say don't feel it. You got to feel it. That's why I think I do the rambling phase, but also to put it into context, kind of go, do you know what? There's other things that can be happening badly. You know, family's all safe. I'm, content. I'm happy. I've got you from the. That's in the world. That's more than can be said for some people. So they compare down. And then I think the final thing is more of a habit. So a habit that I'll tend to follow is I have this kind of, I think as humans, we have a resilience measure, a resilience bar. And sometimes that's low. If we're not feeling, if we're tired or something's been tough that week or whatever it might be, our resilience is a little bit lower. So when you face a setback, your response to it's going to be different because your resilience is low. You might take it on more or whatever it might be. And then there's times when great night's sleep or whatever it might be, our resilience is higher. And one of the tools I use to try and keep my resilience fairly measured is the 6-minute diary. So the 6-minute diary is a diary that you can fill in, takes 6 minutes each day. It's a bit of a mindfulness that could be called. We use that term quite a lot over a couple of years, and exercise, but it kind of talks. You do 3 minutes in the morning, 3 minutes in the evening. Do it when you first wake up, things I'm looking forward to. And you can do it when you go to bed as well. Well, essentially 2 with key points in there.
Yeah.
And when you go to bed, it's like great things I experienced today, or this was my good deed today. So you have that little moment, and the good deed is like, well, once you know that's coming up, it makes you as a human go, I need to do a good deed today. And it could be as simple as letting somebody out in the car, something like that, and give you a thank you or things like that. Or it can be even bigger and the scale of it. But it just makes you have that little reflection moment. You go, I had a good day today.
Yeah.
A little moment that was tough, didn't really like that. But if I look on the whole, these are some great things that happened. It makes you just think about your day. That helps me keep my resilience a little bit stable.
Yeah. I think it's all down to perspective, isn't it? It's like just being a bit more present with the world at the moment. I know it's been a bit of a chaotic world, don't we? But I think, like you said, if you just think about all the things that you have to be grateful for and all the things that have actually gone well, I think with humans, the first thing you can do is think about the bad things that have happened in the day. But a lot of the time, there's 100 times more good things that have happened. You just don't register them, do you?
Yeah, absolutely. That proximity to, we all have it, don't it? That proximity to the negative, the 15 messages and one of them's bad, kind of, you'll focus on the bad kind of thing that we have as human. That is, it's a power in itself, that. So I think it's just interruption to that.